Welcome to the Well Prepared Life podcast, where we dive into the fundamentals of readiness for life's challenges, covering topics from personal responsibility to mental and physical preparedness and beyond. Let's forge resilience, nurture growth, and embrace responsibility on the journey to the well-prepared life.
Welcome to the Well Prepared Life podcast, where we try to forge resilience, nurture growth, and embrace responsibility. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Nathan. And today we're going to kind of talk about the next phrase. So forge resilience, nurture growth. We're on that one today. And nurturing growth, we've talked a lot about growth mindset already. Mm-hmm. That's something that we've already discussed. Check out the podcast just a few episodes ago. But to sum that up in kind of one statement is like the key paradigm for having a growth mindset is that if you, unless you think you can grow, you won't.
Right.
And like there's maybe a better way to say it would be, if you think you can, you're right. If you think you can't, you're right.
Right.
And so having a growth mindset is basically having that perspective and the paradigm that kind of drives you, that I can learn something. I can grow. I can get better at this. And it's recognizing your limitations, recognizing your unique capabilities and things you're in. Not saying that you can't ever do a certain thing, but saying my starting point might be different than somebody else's, but I can always get better at whatever I want to get better at.
Right. And it takes time.
Yeah.
It's not going to be an instant expert at that subject. You got to do some growth.
Maybe easier for some people than others, or something maybe easier for you than it is for somebody else.
Right.
But like anybody that's alive and has like full cognitive function can grow in an area that they choose to grow from where they started. Like there's like anybody can grow in any area from where they start. One step
forward.
You may start at like the bottom tier thing and your growth is like here, and somebody may start up here and grow more.
Sure, yeah.
But you can grow. That's the key thing, is as long as you have that mindset, that's the first step in like starting that process.
Yeah.
So the next kind of element of this is, in order to grow, you have to have that mindset, but then you also like have to create environments for growth. Okay. If you're in an environment that's just dragging you down all the time, you're less likely to grow.
So you're talking like a physical environment, like a like an office or a room in your house or something like that?
I'd say yes, and probably more mental, philosophical, like how you think about things. Uh-huh. But I mean, if you're in a like as far as a typical situation where if you're in a messy home or someplace that is like is stressful for you, something that is hard, like make it like the physical location around you is uncomfortable, there is a better chance that you're like less comfortable and less willing to step into growth, or less willing to try things. Like if the house is messy, I am more likely to be lazy, kind of thing, versus like, or if what I wear.
Okay.
Like as far as like
professional
there are
attire.
times like when I know I have to like work from home for a day, like I still get dressed in jeans and like the clothes that I would wear when I go, just because it helps me get into a mindset of it's time to work.
That makes sense.
Versus if I stay in like sweatpants and a baggy shirt, like I'm much more likely to just sit on the couch and like waste time. I also try to like when I'm at home, I try to avoid like working from home specifically. I try to like avoid like working from the couch some. Yeah. Like sometimes I still end up there and I do fine, but I try to like make sure I at least start my day not at the couch. Start at a table, start sitting up straight somewhere.
Yeah.
Because physical posture, situation, location, like it affects your mindset and how you approach things. So yes, like the physical location matters.
Is a factor. That's what you're talking about here.
But I'm thinking more like the first thing that comes to mind is, if you want to grow, the best thing you can do to create an environment for growth is surround yourself with other people that are growing. Mm-hmm. And I say that purposely. I thought about surround yourself with people that want to grow. Okay. But it's like that, yes. But if you don't see any evidence of growth in those lives, they don't really want to. Kind of like the episode, I think it was like episode 2, when it's like, what do you want? Yeah. 2 or 3. It was early on. What do you want? And it's like, you will do what you actually want to do. And so if you have people that say they want to grow, but aren't actually growing, it's like that actually is counterproductive, because you think you get like the kind of the endorphin high of telling somebody about your ideas and your plans and your goals. Mm-hmm.
Right.
But then you never actually do any of them.
Right.
Because you get the little high on the front end, not the back end.
Yeah.
And so
you're saying that's the biggest thing about having an environment of growth is to have
I would say
community
your
around
first,
you,
yeah, like if you're
friends
in a
that grow.
community, like I do better when I'm hanging out with you and our friend Ben.
Okay.
Because I know that you guys are like wanting to get better. Like you and your job, you talk about a lot, but also like in our personal walks and the things that we do.
Yeah.
It's like we have things that we're like, oh yeah, we want to get better at these things, and we're taking steps to do that.
Yeah.
And so when I'm around you guys, I like whenever I'm like feeling like I haven't done much to grow on purpose for a while, and then I hear somebody else talk about, oh yeah, I did this thing, and I'm like read my Bible every day, or I'm like running every day, I'm doing this thing, and I'm like, okay, I should be doing that.
Sparks a little bit. It's like, all right, I need to do something.
And so you get motivated by other people that are growing.
Okay.
So that's like the first thing. There's statements like this in multiple fields, but it's like you are the sum of your friends is like kind of not cliche, but the kind of like the generic statement, or even like a salary thing where it's like you are the average of your like closest 10 friends in their salary.
Yeah.
If you look at it like
that's crazy.
You are like in the amount of times it actually works out where it's like your salary is somewhere in the average of your closest 10 friends.
That's wild how that works out.
And it's like, and studies have been done to show that more often than not, that's the case, that you like, and it's like, so if you make friends with people that make more, you're more likely to be in a spot where you can make more.
But financial wealth doesn't really lead to growth. It doesn't have to always equate to growth.
Not necessarily. The one small thing I would say with that is people that are doing well financially tend to be people that are seeking to grow. Not all the time, but it's like people that do well in business and work and places that like have physical like benefits of like more finances. They're rarely slackers, put it that way.
Yeah. There's a purpose, a drive.
Yeah, they have a drive at least.
Okay.
And so, and sometimes somebody like found the perfect job where they don't have to do much, but more often than not, if somebody's making a lot of money, they earned it.
That's true.
And so that's where it's like
majority of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, unless it's like certain government positions, like, but yeah, so that's the first thing. Surround yourself with people that are seeking to grow.
Okay.
The next thing that came to mind as I was thinking about this and kind of put this is, and I've heard this from our lead pastor as he's talked about developing rhythms and habits, but find a keystone habit.
Keystone habit. What does that mean?
So it is the habit that when you do this, other things start to fall in line.
Like in an arch, it's the keystone that holds it all together?
Is
that what that
Yeah, actually, I think,
from? Okay,
keystone.
Like a bridge,
I think actually that is, I'd forgotten what it specifically, the background is, but I think you are right. Now that you're saying that, where there is a stone that it's like, if you take that one out, the whole thing falls down.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that's like the background of it, but it's kind of that idea of developing a keystone habit of when you do this, the rest, it's easier to follow through on the other habits that you've made and the other things that you're doing in your life.
Okay.
Like I have a friend who every morning he takes a cold shower. I think we mentioned this last week.
Right. Yeah.
And he does that both as a resilience building thing, because it's a hard thing that he doesn't want to do. But he also does that because the other side of it is I did this hard thing today. I can do more hard things today. And that's the other side of it. It's a mentality habit that he does to prime him mentally so that as he goes into the rest of his day, he is ready to like take on those hard things that he otherwise, if he didn't take that cold shower, might be more willing to be like, nah, I'm good. I don't want to do this today.
It's kind of like habit chaining. I think Atomic Habits talks about that.
Yeah.
Of like if you chain habits together, it's like, okay, if I set my guitar out, well, I guess that's a different example. But if certain habits, if you chain them up together, it'll lead into the other pretty easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so some examples for this is having a really good morning routine.
Okay.
Like if you have a morning routine that I start my day this way. For me, I found there's a period of time where I was, before we had our daughter, so that has thrown a lot of my habits out of whack, and I'm still not back in rhythm. Yeah. But like there's a time where I was getting up between like 5 and 5:30 every day to go to the gym. And I would go to the gym and get home, still had time, and I would like have my time alone in the morning. And then I would have time with my family. So I was actually like, by me getting up so early and getting out and going to the gym, because that was the key thing is getting up and doing something.
Getting out. Yeah.
I took away the option of like, I'm just going to like coast the rest of the morning before I went. Yeah. Also I like really looking back, liked having so much time in the morning. Because I felt like I was going to work after I'm like, I've gotten a lot done today. And I'm already kind of won a little bit. And then I'm going into work where I can then do more.
You're in that groove. Your engine's already clicking.
Versus when recently I've been waking up closer to like 7:30, having to leave by 8:30 at the latest. And it's like, I like feel like I'm up, take care of my daughter for a little bit, shower, get dressed, leave.
Yeah.
And there's no
Very rushed.
margin in that. So those are some examples. Eating healthy is another one of when your body is feeling good, like exercising. When you're in better physical shape, there are studies that show that your mind, like it's easier to take on mental challenges when you're physically fit.
So you need better sleep? Would that also be one? Yeah.
Yeah. Going to bed at a certain time, waking up at a certain
Routine.
time. And yeah, so find something that when you do this, when you do that thing, it makes it easier for you to do other things that are maybe harder for you, or other things that you say, this is what I want to be known for and what I want to do.
Yeah. So what else is an environment of growth entail?
Well, similar to building resilience,
Okay.
to grow on purpose, like things happen, you grow through them. Like I would say most people grow throughout their life, whether they mean to or not.
Yeah.
But to grow on purpose, you got to seek it out. And similar to building resilience, it's hard. Like growing muscle, the same example I used, growing muscle is hard.
Right.
It requires breaking down of current muscle so it can build up more and like fill in the gaps. And so...
What's that equation you used as like a growth?
Oh, yeah. It's painful. Growth equals change.
Yeah.
Change equals pain.
Yeah.
So therefore, growth equals pain.
Pain, yeah.
And so it's a painful process. And so you got to seek it out, though. And that's the key thing. And kind of in that realm of like pain, because it is painful to grow, you are in a changing environment and change is hard and painful. You need to embrace that pain.
Embrace the pain. Embrace the suck.
And to like pull like a biblical reference of this, but James 1, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
It says, count it all joy when you encounter suffering and trials of various kinds.
Yeah.
And it lists off because the suffering produces patience and the patience produces character. And basically it's this chain of things that we all want.
Yeah.
Like we all want to be patient. We want to have joy. We all want to have like character. We all want to have these like resilient characteristics. And it, according to James and what the Bible says, it comes from suffering.
I got a coworker, and he always uses that phrase. If there's something that comes up that nobody wants to do, and it's kind of a pain in the butt, he's like, I count it joy. He kind of laughs and gets after it, and he's a good guy.
And so embrace the pain of growth. And this is different than like there are different areas where you get pain in your life. Like there's another verse in scripture talks about like suffering for the gospel versus suffering. So don't put yourself in stupid positions that are painful.
Yeah.
Like make conscious, smart, wise decisions about where to step into painful growth that is good. Don't just be like, well, it hurts, so it's good. Not necessarily.
Right.
It's like if you are like, I'm going to wait till the last minute to get this in and suffer the pain of not sleeping at all and then struggling with that. That's not the pain we're talking about.
Right.
We're talking about the pain of actually sacrificing on the front end consistently so you get the project done early and excellently.
Right.
Like not the pain of I didn't get any sleep because I did an all-nighter.
Just not putting it off. You want to,
And that's just one example. But as far as like the times, I think an easy way to differentiate if it's like good or bad pain is like, is this something that advances my goals or is it something that like detracts from them? Like as far as like, this should make it better. I should be better because of this pain. And most of the time you can evaluate that pretty well. But I think that's like an important thing to remember is like that you need to seek it out.
And you said something there with the goals. You're like, does this match up with my goals? I feel like the one of the things was, I think you were about to say it, was the setting goals.
Well, that is
a key part.
Yeah, key part of growth is setting goals.
Yeah.
And I'm not the best at this. My wife is great at this. I am not.
Yeah.
So this is something I want to grow in. And I can grow because I'll need to like sit down, put the effort in and make it happen. But when you set goals and achieve them, it's good mile markers for seeing how you've grown.
Yeah.
And like I may have shared this already, but my wife was talking about some of the goals she set for last year, 2023, and how at the end of the year she looked back and during the year she kind of felt, oh, I'm doing fine. It's okay. But look back, she's like, oh, I hit like all of my goals.
Nice.
And she's like, I feel great right now.
Yeah.
Even though during the year, in the midst of just living life, doing things, she wasn't really like feeling that. But like because she had a way to measure the things that she said she was going to do, it made it so that when she looked back and had something she could actually look and like compare against, she's like, oh, I did really well.
Yeah.
I did great this year.
Yeah. We got a whole episode on setting goals, smart goals.
Yes. So definitely check that out.
Yeah, it's a good conversation.
Definitely check that out. That'll go into a lot more detail.
Yeah.
And the last thing is be consistent.
Okay.
Be consistent. And this is probably the thing I struggle with the most. And it's probably one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
Related to leadership, Craig Groeschel has a podcast. It's like I think it's called the Leadership Podcast by Craig Groeschel. It's great. Highly recommend it. But one of the things that he says often throughout his podcast that I think applies if you just shift it like to a personal level, but it's like great leaders do consistently what good leaders do occasionally. And I think you can apply that same principle into growth as far as like if you want to be somebody that grows well, you got to grow consistently. You don't take breaks on growth. You might have high seasons and low seasons, but you don't take breaks.
There's a book by Cameron Haynes. It's called Endure, and he has an equation in there. It says average skill plus average effort equals average results. So if you want to have different than average results, you're going to have to either have a lot better skill or a lot better effort. And usually should be both to get the maximize end results. So I like that.
Yeah, I think I appreciate what you just said there because it makes me think. So the goal of this podcast is not to help people just coast.
That's good. Yeah.
And so if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I don't have to grow. Sure, you don't have to.
Right.
You could just go about life, coast along, get through, have a decent life, especially in the West. Like you just kind of like let life happen and find a regular job and work it out and not really try to grow at all. You could do that. But what kind of life is that?
Yeah.
We're going to talk a lot more about this in the next podcast. But as far as this idea of like, how do you get fulfillment in life? And I can tell you this, it's not by coasting.
That's a good tie-in. Good little teaser there.
And so never settle for stagnancy, like seek growth and nurture growth in your life. You will never be sorry for growing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you may get a little tired of it.
Yeah.
And be like, is there any end? And the hard but good answer is no.
So would you say that there's value in having growth in one area of your life? Maybe you can flex it. I think we talked about that before in a previous episode of like different parts of life.
Yeah.
The different metrics.
So yeah, there's a concept, like at least it's not wrong to think about this as far as like, well, I'm growing in this area, but I'm kind of coasting in that area, or I am like I'm working intensely over here and I'm just doing like minimal effort over there.
Right.
And that's fine. I would say like manage your energy well, manage your capabilities well, become more self-aware of those things. Ask those questions of like, hey, am I going too hard in every area? Do I need to back off in certain areas?
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing to hold in front of you.
Yeah.
But here's my challenge is to never let yourself stop growing.
Always grow.
Always be growing in at least some area.
Yeah.
And in the kind of the flip side of that, be careful of in the other areas where you may not growing as much, letting those like die back.
Yeah. My mind goes to like I think it was Madden or NCAA football video game where you can do practice sessions for your player and you can gain ability points, XP points in certain traits. So if like you want to practice running, you would just make your character run a lot or do some different routes for receiver routes, throw balls down the field for like QB arm strength, and you can practice and gain skills in that different areas, but you can't do all at the same time.
Yeah.
And you could skip practice, but that doesn't improve your character at all. So there's an interesting. That's where my mind goes to of like a video game, like the different stats and different charts. And you got to grow in one of the areas. Try to seek out ways that you want to improve. Like,
and if you're looking for like, well, what areas you're talking about? Think about that heart, soul, mind, strength. Like as far as like the work, play, love dashboard. Like those types of things are good frameworks for thinking of what am I growing in this area or am not. And that's So it's like. You can't necessarily go at 100% in all areas at once. I'd say that there are certain times in life when that kind of does happen. But those aren't sustainable. You can't do that forever.
Right. Like maybe graduating high school, you kind of hit all the areas at once.
But no matter what you're doing, lean into growth. It's worth it.
Nice.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Web for Life podcast, where we forge resilience, nurture growth, and embrace responsibility. Like, share, subscribe, get it out there, and we'll see you next time.